This is the Ancient and Medieval History Lecture for Wednesday, the 9th of March, 2022.
We're still in National Women's Month.
Oh, yes. It goes on and on. So I wonder what next month is. National Groundhogs Month? National...
Don't go to school month.
No, that's July. Okay.
Which one have I been doing?
So, we have been talking about the Principate as one vast market where peace and prosperity improves the possibility for a civilian lifestyle. And that's something that's still important today. If people don't have protection from the chaotic elements within and from beyond their society, they can't live their lives. They can't work. You're constantly living on the frontier, scrabbling to just make ends meet. You can't prosper without peace. Peace is a prerequisite for prosperity. This is something important to grasp. And it's what I learned as a young man, or actually as a boy, back in the 1970s. Every so often look up at me, it makes me feel important. I spent a lot of time in New York City, in the Bronx, in the early and mid and late 1970s. And the city was a disaster zone. The city went bankrupt. There were trash strikes where garbage men didn't do their work for weeks or months, and the trash just piled up in the streets in man-high berms. There were not exactly, well, there was actually a police strike, but there were also blue flu epidemics where police simply, en masse called in sick because they weren't being paid what they were told to be paid. Crime was out of control. There were graffiti tags literally on every exposed piece of brick and on every subway. Street crime went through the roof. And people began setting their own homes on fire to collect the insurance money because no one would buy property in the Bronx. Because the Bronx had been such a disaster zone that no one in their right minds who had a choice to live there would ever live there. It didn't work. And why it didn't work is because the basic compact, the basic agreement that civilized folk make with one another had broken down. Instead of being reasonable, law-abiding people, I'm not talking about perfect little angels. I'm talking about reasonable, law-abiding people. Large groups of folk within New York City saw an opportunity to be predators and to treat their fellow New Yorkers as prey, and they did so. And oftentimes, they got away with it. There were neighborhoods in New York City, there still are, where the police did not go unless they went in force, because the police would be ambushed. This is happening again in our cities. There are places that you should never go. Not unless you're suicidal. Even if you're suicidal, I wouldn't go to some of these neighborhoods because you won't die quick. Die painless. When law and order is not maintained, civilian life falls apart. Doesn't work. Cannot work. And what the Roman Republic did at the end, and what Augustus's empire did even better, was to provide peace that made prosperity possible. It provided safety from invasion and from banditry. Enough safety so that people could stop acting like nervous gerbils looking for the next predator and start acting like men and women, like human beings, working hard on their farms, working hard in their shops, working hard trading, producing, making the world a better place, one product sale at a time. That's what's lost when law and order breaks down. So the economy of Rome's Principate is guaranteed by the security provided by Rome's military and the stability provided by the government. Because the truth is, even wacky Caligula and arty Nero didn't really cause problems to the provinces. They were a threat to the people near power in Rome. They were not really going to make difficulties for the Roman governors who ruled most of the empire. Most of the people of the empire were not involved in their wackiness. There was a brief civil war in 69, the year of 4 emperors, and then it passed. Quick wars usually aren't that bad. So the empire goes back to normal under the Flavians, peace and prosperity. Now, in terms of religion and society, Olympian paganism is not satisfying the needs of people anymore. The needs of people to make sense of their lives. That's something we all have. We are mortals. We live in a span of time. We have good days and bad days. We feel healthy. We feel unhealthy. There are days when we're in the groove and it seems like everything goes right for us. And there are other days where you can't fall out of bed properly. We know fear. Whether it's fear because you're outside and there's a giant thunderstorm, whether it's fear because somebody might do something that might harm you, or we know a hope. Because we can imagine things beyond what's here physically, because we can imagine things that are transcendent, that deal with capital T truth. Big questions like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What's good? What's evil? What's right? What's wrong? That's what religion and philosophy are for. They're to explain the big questions. Whether or not you are a believer, I'm looking at religion now as a part of society, as a social institution. I'm looking at it for the function that it provides. And what it provides people is with the kind of answers they need to go on and do their thing. It's a moral and psychological equivalent of the peace and prosperity I was just talking about. If people are constantly wondering, are we in a universe built by devils? A world of pain and life and uncertainty followed by an afterlife of hellfire and brimstone and pitchforks in our backsides? You're going to look at life in a particular way and you're not going to really invest in it because it's a horror show. But if life is a grand stage on which you can be heroic, like the Olympian gods want you to be, you could be a genius, you could be a later-day Achilles, you could be a later-day Odysseus, you could be something so wonderful if only you let yourself be free and could find a way to eat. Because you still got to find a way to eat. Most people spend their lives finding a way to eat by working at jobs. But you can still have some of that transcendent glory. You can be a mom, you can be a dad, you can be a good friend. You can be a good citizen. You can be a dutiful worshiper. Life affords everyone, almost everyone, the opportunity to shine in some way. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Thus goes the song. And part of that's important. If you don't have something in life that makes you feel like that, life is a horror show. So, when I say the Olympian gods are no longer satisfying the religious needs of the people, what I mean is that the answers they provide and the stories they tell and the moral lessons that these stories convey are all falling flat. They are not making people go, wow. And on some level, when faced with death, when faced with birth, when faced with war, when faced with life-changing events, good and bad, there comes a point where we need wow. Where we need to be impressed, where we need to be moved to tears by something that just seems true and beautiful and wonderful. And those things are different for each of us. And they're different at different moments in our lives. But I think they're the moments that are worth living for. The Olympian gods became a religion of the state, a patriotic faith. You have rituals before battles. They test the signs. They take out the organs of the sacrificed animal. And if there's no green goop, go fight. You're going to be glorious. If there's green goop, don't fight. It's a bad omen. The politicians were the chief priests. Not everyone's Achilles. Not everyone's brave and strong. Not everyone's Odysseus. Not everyone is absolutely brilliant. So the people of Rome are in search of new gods. Not all of them, but the elites. It is in this context that Christianity is spreading. At first, Christianity seems like just one of dozens of mystery cults out of the East. There's the cult of Isis, which appeals to women, because Isis is the Egyptian goddess of resurrection. Set chops up Osiris, Isis's brother husband. They're gods, the Egyptian gods. The incest is implicit. And so Isis engages in a quest to find the body parts of her sliced up, scattered brother, husband, which she does. And she puts them back together again and revivifies them with her life-giving femininity. Now, the symbol of the cult of Isis looks a bit like a cross, but it's not. Does anyone know what that shape is called? It's like a cross, but it has a loop on the top rather than a strut. Anyone know what it's called? Yeah. It's an ankh.
There we go. Yeah, that's it.
I think it's an ankh. I just suddenly had my entire mental certainty shifted.
It's an odd.
It's an ankh. Okay, good. That's what I thought it was. What did you say it was? Pythos. Interesting. Anyway, what this is the symbol of the goddess Isis. And it's a symbol of resurrection. And I'm sure, given the way Christianity appropriates and alters pagan mythology, that there is a connection between the ankh and the crucifix and the cross in terms of symbols, because the cross and the crucifix also represent resurrection. They do. Jesus is crucified. Jesus is born again. You're looking very doubtful. Is there a question I can answer?
No.
Okay. If there is, that's what I'm here for. I may give you crazy, stupid, wrong answers, but I'll give you an answer. It'll at least be entertaining.
What's the meaning of life?
42. Yeah.
Wait, so, what did she say that the symbol was called?
Pythos.
Pythos?
Yeah. I don't know what a pythos is.
Yeah, I don't know what Pythos is.
Do you know what a pythos is?
I thought I did.
Okay, but not. That's okay. I have that feeling all the time. I think I understand something and then I don't. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering.
Okay,
what she said.
yeah. So, Christianity, like the other... Oh, and there's another. There's a cult to Mithra. Remember in the movie The Eagle, the Channing Tatum character is saying, Mithra, Lord of Light, please help me not disgrace myself with my legion. Mithra, Lord of Light. Mithra was a god of resurrection that was very appealing to soldiers. So the cult of Isis tended to appeal to a lot of women. The cult of Mithra tended to appeal to a lot of men. So did the cult of Hercules, because both of them dealt with very masculine things like courage and working hard and warfare and sacrificing yourself for the greater good, all that stuff. So the story of the Nazarene carpenter who dies for our sins and is reborn, was born of a virgin mother, where there's a kiss of peace and Holy Communion and all this other stuff, this does seem to fit much of what the Eastern mystery cults that were appealing to more and more Romans had. They had this strange theology, but it was a theology that offered hope after death. This is one of the common things. The early Jewish faith does not talk about an afterlife. And early on, when they start talking about an afterlife, the Jews talk about Sheol as the afterlife. And Sheol is like a Jewish Hades. Not the Elysian Fields, not Tartarus, but Hades, sort of a gray underground cavern where the spirits of the dead just wander. It's hopeless, meaningless, and dull. Sort of like the Hades that you saw in the Odyssey movie that we watched. Not a happy place to be, but not hell either, just ugh. And then eventually, around the time of Christ, the idea of life after death becomes more and more important in a bunch of religions, including Christianity. So Christianity is born during this time, and it's one of the Eastern mystery cults that begin to spread throughout the Roman world. And the Roman Empire is ruled by an aristocracy that almost entirely comes from Italy. The emperors are Italian, the people are from the boot. That's who rules the empire. Okay, that's the Principate, 1st century AD. Any questions before we shift to the Pax Romana? Okay, the Pax Romana, like the Principate, is a time of Roman imperial success. Taken together, these 2 centuries are just, woo, Rome. Way to go, Rome. Because Rome is on top. And the Pax Romana, which means the Roman peace, is the topsiest top of them all. Oh gosh, they're on top. They are above and beyond. The bestest ever. The rough dates are from the years 96 to 192, from the accession of old Emperor Nerva to the assassination of Marcus Aurelius' son Commodus, which did not happen in the arena by a guy named Maximus, who then restored the Republic. That is the false part of the movie Gladiator.
Darn it.
Oh, it ends very differently, and we will get to that. It's a good story. So, the rough time of the Pax Romana is approximately the 2nd century AD. Now, there's also a transition period roughly from 192 to about 230, which is, a 38-year period, where it's no longer quite the Pax Romana, but it's not yet the crisis. And we'll talk a little about that, too. So, government and ruler. Well, no longer to the Romans. I mean, all the Romans are dead who were alive during Augustus. Little tiny baby that's born in the last year of Augustus' life has died of old age by this point. They're all gone. So the pretense that Rome is still a republic it's not unimportant, but it's less important. So the ruler of the Roman world is no longer called princeps, he's called Imperator. Imperator. Do any of you remember your Latin enough to know what Imperator means? Imperator. It's okay, thank you for trying. Imperator. What is the imperative tense in English? You! Turn on that light! You don't have to. Give me an example.
It's already on.
That's the twisted part. Yeah, but it's already, turn it on! It's already, turn it on! I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of a certain kind of really sick comedy. The imperative tense in English is the tense where you command. So, imperator is he who commands. That's what the word means. he who commands, the Imperator, he who commands. And it's a paramilitary title. It is what you would call your general in battle. Imperator, commander, he who commands. That's what Imperator really means. And Imperator is definitely the root word of our word emperor in English. Imperator, emperor. Now, the Germans, forget that. They bring it all back to Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar. Augustus' uncle. Gaius Julius Caesar, the man who would be king but was assassinated before it happened. Gaius Julius Caesar, who was actually not as good a ruler as Augustus was, who founded the empire. But still, the Germans and the Russians, instead of using the word imperator or emperor, use the word Kaiser or Tsar or Tsar. Kaiser is the German word for emperor, and it means Caesar. And actually, that's the way the Romans said Caesar. They didn't say Caesar. They had a hard C. It was Caesar. Caesar. That's the actual pronunciation that Romans would have used. Let's see. Julius Caesar would be Gaius Julius Caesar, his name. So the Russians would, the old style spelling is CZAR for Tsar. The new style spelling is TSAR, Tsar. It's both the same thing. It's Caesar, Tsar, Russian. They drop a symbol because they're Russian cool. Tsar. All you need is Tsar. You don't need Caesar. No. Tsar will do. So Tsar it is. So in Russian and German, they don't use the word imperator or emperor. They use the word Tsar or Kaiser for Caesar. But we use emperor. I'll turn the heat up a little. These people seem cold. I wouldn't want you to. Well, actually, probably I don't care, but I don't want to see you suffer. It's all about. There we go. So, yeah, sometimes when it's my birthday, I stay home. You're a better person than me because you came to school.
Oh, I stay home too. Kinda.
I do too because
Lisa?
I still school for my birthday.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, you're in July or something?
June.
June.
At the end of June.
Okay,
I
yeah.
go to school on my birthday, but then I take the next 2 days off.
Ah, okay. As long as you get something.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will. Get wonderful presents. Okay. So, let's see. These actually find the best way of choosing a successor in the entire history of Rome. These are the adopted emperors. Now, they're adopted emperors because none of them, up until Marcus Aurelius, has a son that lives to inherit. They either don't have kids, or they don't have sons, or they have sons who die. So they get to adopt their heir. Now, what does that give? See, genetics is a crapshoot. You may think that Darwin talks about a constant progression where you are the synthesis of the best qualities of your parents, but we both know that's not really true.
No, it's not.
Evolution wanders. Evolution is a randomizer. Now, you've got in every imperial and royal dynasty in human history the same basic pattern. You start with the rise, an ambitious man who doesn't take no for an answer, an ambitious man who seizes the world. And that's the founder of the dynasty. And then you've got, I am the best. Early on in the dynasty, I am the king. I was born to rule, and I rule so well. The high point of the dynasty, the strongest king. Usually not the same as the founder. The founder is usually more a master of warfare, both civil and foreign. The high point, the masterful king, is a master of governance, of ruling. And then you have, I'm the idiot son. I'm the idiot son. Idiot, 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 idiot. I'm the idiot son. I do stupid things and they make me build a palace because at least I won't do too much harm building a palace. Because. And then you have his descendants. So what happens is the dynasties, they start with a strong founder. They have some kind of high point king or ruler. Maybe if they're lucky, they have a couple of those. And then they descend into idiocy. And it's not because of inbreeding. Unless you're in Egypt, it's not because of that. It's just families, and this is the great flaw of any genetic theory, whether it's racialism or whether it's aristocracy or royalty, the idea that blood confers virtue. No. Blood is a crapshoot. Nature is going to winnow out different qualities at different times. Sometimes being a warrior is a great thing. Sometimes being a warrior is not appreciated at all. Depends on when and where you are. So the royal families that rely on blood inheritance always have a rise and then a high point and then a fall. Because you cannot expect the same bloodline to produce excellent rulers over and over. It just doesn't work that way. Now, with genetic engineering, that might change. But we're not there yet. Thank the Lord, we're not there yet.
We could be.
If
it was ethical, we could be.
Yeah. Certainly there are people who want to play that game. They want to reset the world and so forth. But no, we're not there yet. And frankly, I would be up for burning the labs to make sure we never get there. I do not like the idea of purpose designing human beings and playing God. That bothers me for a bunch of reasons. Scientific giants and ethical midgets. Bad combination. What if we do this? That's so cool. No, it's like giving a 4-year-old who's angry a revolver that's loaded.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that'll end well.
Oh, I mean, no, that would be horrible.
I want more pudding! Boom!
Now who's gonna get his pudding?
Boom! Don't point out inconvenience truths. No, they'd have to use 2 hands. Pulling the trigger's not easy. I laugh. He's so sick. He laughs about the most horrible things.
He pulled out a
Now you're pudding. Now that's even sicker. Anyway, really, don't go there. So what these guys do, because they have no male heirs, is they adopt. Now, adoption is the best, and here's why. You can look around your entire extended family and find a young man, because they're not going to have female emperors. It's not today, it's them. So no National Women's Month in Rome. Every day is National Women's Day, because somewhere somebody's giving birth. The best destiny. What? You're such a feminist sometimes.
I am a feminist.
Yeah, well, good for you. That's one of us. Anyway, I joke. The point is, you can look around your extended family and find somebody who's bright, who's not full of it, who's got common sense, who's got wisdom, and who's strong-willed without being a jerk. You want somebody strong-willed because you don't want somebody who's going to go to every person they talk to, oh, yeah, you're right. And then a new person, oh, yeah, you're right. But I just said the opposite things to the last guy. Yeah, you're righter than he is. And then somebody else comes along, oh, you're right. Now, you don't want somebody like that to be a ruler because they're not going to be a ruler. They're going to be weak and they're going to be ruled by their courtiers.
We're going to get stabbed.
You want somebody strong-willed, but you don't want somebody who's stupidly stubborn. I'm right. Sorry, your idea about putting bayonets on mines doesn't really work. I'm right. But if I put bayonets on bombs, I can roll them down the hill and they'll stab people before they blow up. That's not going to work. I'm right. You don't want somebody who is stubbornly stupid. You want somebody who is strong-willed but wise enough to listen and consider advice. So the best young possibilities are cherry-picked by the emperor to be their successor. And this allows for talent, not just genetics, but talent to become the prerequisite to become the ruler of the Roman world. So the Romans these adoptive emperors go out of their way to pick the best candidate, somebody capable of handling the job. And as a result, these are some of the best emperors that the Roman Empire ever has. Okay, we will start. Nerva is picked because he's old and he has no children and he's a respected senator who will die soon. See, the compromise is the greatest general of the army at the death of Commodus is a man named Trajan. He's from Roman aristocrats who went to Spain in Marius' time. So he's sort of like a Western cowboy as far as the Romans are concerned. And Trajan commands the loyalty of the army. And the army wants to make Trajan emperor. But Trajan is smart. Trajan says, no, what we've got to do is we've got to show respect for the Senate. So let's find a senator that's very well respected, who has no children, who's going to die soon. And the Senate will pick him. And he'll name me his successor. And that's what happens. The Senate is seen to pick the next emperor. So this has the form of legality. It's the Senate choosing the emperor. That's so cool. An elected monarchy. The Senate can choose the most, and they chose Nerva. He's a great guy. Nerva has a long history of being a great, wise fellow. And Nerva's picking the general of the armies that everyone wanted to be emperor. That's so cool, because now the army will support him too. So the emperor is chosen by the Senate, and the emperor, who's going to die soon, and everyone knows it, picks the army general that would have won any civil war, but it has the system, it has the forms of legality. Remember, an empire with republican forms. Even after they stop using the term princeps, this notion of legality, of Roman republic, still functioning, is a powerful thing that the empire and the emperors use for legitimacy, the moral right to rule. So Nerva's around for less than 2 years. He becomes emperor in the year 96, and he dies in 98. And then it's Trajan. And Trajan is the most conquering of emperors ever. Okay, what does Trajan do? Well, I gotta get over here because there's so much stuff to talk about. Okay, first of all, Trajan builds up the size of the Roman military. But that's not all. North of the Danube River, east of the Theiss River, and of the Carpathian Mountains, west of the Carpathian Mountains, is an area that we would call Transylvania, which today is part of Romania. But in those days, it was the land of the Dacians, D-A-C-I-A, Dacia. And the Dacians have a ruler named Decebalus. And Decebalus has been raiding Roman territory. Okay, raiding Roman territory. So Trajan says, you know what? It would be good for us to seize Dacia as a pretext to seize the areas to the east and west of Dacia and expand the empire and have some mountainous frontiers for a change. So Trajan invades Dacia. And in just a couple of years, he conquers the place. Decebalus is brought to Rome in a triumph, and Dacia becomes a part of the Roman Empire. And it's going to remain a part of the Roman Empire for about 150 years. And it is something which helps break up barbarian attacks in this part of the world against the imperial border. So that's Dacia. There is a column of Trajan that they build in honor, which is like a long comic book. In pictures, it tells the story of Trajan's campaign. Picture the beginning of the story, and just wrapping around, you've got the soldiers marching into Dacia, and the soldiers crossing a river, building a bridge, and the soldiers fighting the Dacians. And then there's the miracle of rain, one of the creepiest pictures from Roman times. You've got Roman soldiers desperately afraid. And then you've got this sort of old man figure made of rain, like a rain cloud. coming over the Roman army and raining on them and giving them the water they need to not die. And they win the battle because of the miracle of rain. So the column of Trajan, Trajan's Column, is this visual medium that tells the story of his conquest of Dacia. But that's not all. Trajan is going to do what Romans have been dreaming about for centuries. After Dacia, Trajan brings his armies east to Syria. And he then conquers Parthia. He takes Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital, which is about here, and Roman soldiers bathe in the Persian Gulf. He takes over Iraq. Now, does Trajan take over Iran? No. The border is the Zagros Mountains, the same border between Iran and Iraq today. But he takes over the heart where Babylon was. He takes over where the Sumerians and the Akkadians were. He conquers Mesopotamia. Roman troops are bathing in the Persian Gulf. This is amazing. But he dies. He dies before that is consolidated. So now, his successor, who's his adopted nephew, a guy named Hadrian, Hadrian takes over from Trajan. And Hadrian decides, we're not going to hold on to Mesopotamia. It's a trap. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull back to a new border on the Euphrates, and this new border will be defended. So Trajan pulls back to a new border that he fortifies. Trajan also famously orders a wall built across the center of Britain that's going to protect Britain, Roman Britannia, from the barbarians to the north. Why? Because Trajan doesn't think Rome has the ability to conquer the entire island of Britain. Britain is a very big place. It goes on and on. The island of Britain is the size of Idaho. And it's not near the center of the Roman world. So instead of trying to conquer the whole island, Hadrian builds a wall. And Hadrian's wall is still exists in places in northern England. You can go there. You can see this wall. And it's a big feature. So Hadrian brings peace to the borders of the empire by reducing its size and fortifying its borders. Trajan, by the way, also was part of taking the area between the Upper Rhine and the Upper Danube, this triangle region here. This is Roman for a while. That shortens Rome's borders. So Trajan is the conquering emperor, but Hadrian reduces the size. Now, Hadrian is a sophisticated fellow. He travels around the empire minting coins. You know how we have state coins, different states have different symbols on the back? That idea came from Hadrian, because whenever Hadrian traveled to a province in the Roman Empire, he had a special coin made with whatever was famous in that part of the Roman Empire. So it was interesting. If you're a numismatist, which is a coin collector from ancient times, Hadrian's a big deal because Hadrian makes a bunch of specialty coins that are very hard to find. And he has this. Every Roman province has its own special coin. Hadrian also is famous for, well, he has a wife, but they don't have kids, and his lover is a Greek youth, upper teens, and he dies around 20, named Antoninus. So Hadrian publicly lives with his wife, but privately lives with Antoninus. And anyone who is anyone to the emperor knows about Antoninus because Hadrian loves him. When Antoninus dies, Hadrian is distraught, broken, and he makes Antoninus into a god, and he has a city built in his honor called Antonopoulos. Now, it is this most sophisticated of emperors who is in charge when the Jews under Simon Bar Kokhba rebel and fight Rome. And this, again, most peaceful and sophisticated of emperors, says, I have had enough of this. And when his armies march in and crush the Bar Kokhba rebellion and crush the Jews, Hadrian is the one that disperses them. Any Jew found within 50-mile radius of what used to be called Jerusalem, what I have renamed Aelia Capitolina, the capital city on the hill of the Aeli, which is my clan. Any Jew found anywhere near that place is going to be tortured, and their family is going to be tortured, and they'll wish they were never born. The Jews are picked up like a handful of sand and scattered to the winds, like picking up a handful of sand on a windy day on a beach, closing your eyes because the sand's going to go into them if you don't, and then going whee and seeing where the grains will go everywhere. Some grains will go a few feet. Some grains will be carried all the way down the beach if the wind is strong enough. The Jews are dispersed. This is the great diaspora. And Hadrian makes it happen because Hadrian is sick and tired. I mean, the Jews were crushed just 50 years before, and now they're coming back and they're doing the same freaking thing? No! So Hadrian dies. Now, Hadrian also made some interesting plans. He picked a middle-aged guy named Antoninus, not Antinous, his lover, Antoninus. And he also suggested to Antoninus that Antoninus adopt two young men, Lucius Verus and Marcus Aurelius, to be his successors. And Antoninus, after Hadrian dies, does just what Hadrian wants. Antoninus is known to history as Antoninus Pius. Pius is a name, you can tell Mr. Brzee this, that means a faithful son. That's what pious, remember, piety, pietas, being faithful to your fathers. So Antoninus is called Antoninus Pius because he does what Hadrian, his father, wanted him to do, which is not only rule in Hadrian's way while making as few changes as possible, but Antoninus Pius is also willing to keep Hadrian's choice for his successor. So Hadrian doesn't just choose the guy who rules in the, 25 years after he dies, but Hadrian, who dies in the year 138, has picked people to rule who will rule from 138 to 180. That's 42 years, because Antoninus listened to it. Meaning of life. That's true. The universe said everything. So, now we come to Lucius Verus is the curly-haired guy in that sculpture. It means Lucius the True. And his brother is Marcus Aurelius. Now, Lucius the True, Lucius Verus, this guy, is a bit of a party animal. A playboy. He's got talent, but he'd rather have fun than develop it. His brother Marcus is entirely different. His adoptive brother Marcus is serious. In fact, he's being trained by Epictetus, one of the greatest philosophers ever, a Stoic philosopher. And Marcus Aurelius is his student. And Marcus Aurelius is absolutely serious and absolutely earnest. Lucius Verus, wine, women, and song. Let's have fun. Yeah, he's smart, but then make a big deal about it. So when Antoninus Pius dies in 161, these guys become co-emperor. But it becomes quickly apparent that while Marcus is a hard-working, serious guy, Lucius Verus is a bit of a playboy. However, Lucius decides he's going to do what Trajan did. The Parthians are making trouble again. So what Lucius the True, what this guy wants to do is he wants to conquer Iraq again. He wants to conquer Mesopotamia. He wants to conquer the Parthians again. So Aurelius says, fine, you're co-emperor. You want to do that, go for it. And so Lucius Verus gathers an army. Oh God, it's a disaster. He marches into Parthia, into a plague zone. He didn't know it was a plague zone, but it's a plague zone. I don't know if it's bubonic plague or something else. The Romans call it plague. Most of the army dies of the plague. Lucius Verus dies of the plague. The survivors come back from this disaster, bring the plague with them. Now, this plague is going to be really important to the future history of Rome. Why? I should use green. Plague. The Romans are going to lose a big chunk of their people. Some people say it's a fifth. Some people say it's a quarter. Some people say it's a third. A few people say it's a half, but I don't think it was that high. But they lose between a fifth and half their people. Let's say it's a quarter. 1/4 of the Roman population dies of this plague. And it's not just one spurt. The plague, like all diseases, comes back in waves. Just like there was the original COVID, and then there was Delta, and there's Omicron. There's probably going to be others as well. It's the way diseases work. You have just waves and waves and waves. So the Romans lose between a fifth and half their people. Let's say it's a quarter. One thing about the Romans is when they become peaceful, they stop having as many kids. It's not like a growing group of people that's in their conquest phase. These Romans are comfortable, so they have fewer kids because it's easier. The result is that this loss of population is not replaced naturally. For the rest of Rome's history, from the 160s AD until Rome falls in the West in 476, that's 300 plus years, the Roman Empire is underpopulated because of this plague. Now that's a horror show. It's also a horror show that the Romans couldn't have more kids. They needed more kids, but they were doing other things. They were having fun. What we will do next time is we will talk about the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who survives him, him being Lucius Verus. Any questions, comments, or thoughts? Thank you very much. Have a good day.